If you follow us on Twitter, you'll know that we breed Buff Orpington chickens, and I've been asked to pull some basic information together for anyone who's thinking about keeping chickens for the very first time. Now, the first thing that you need to think about is where you're actually going to keep them. Do you want them on grass, or do you want them in a confined area? Now, if you're going to keep them in a confined area, you will not be able to keep chickens on grass. They will tear up the grass unless they have enough space to be able to roam and scratch without it causing any major damage to the grass itself. Now, chickens do graze. It's not something a lot of us actually think about, but they do eat the grass, and the advantage of them eating the grass is that it gives you much yellower yolks in your eggs, and they are creamier and they are tastier, so it is a consideration. Now, this is the area that we keep our chickens in, and as you can see, it is extensive, and it extends further down than you can actually see from this camera angle. Not many people can actually provide this type of area, but if you can provide a larger area for maybe 2 chickens or allow them access to your garden, that's actually not a bad thing at all. Now, if you are going to allow them to roam within your garden, you would need to consider whether they would be subject to any attack from predators. Now, predators aren't just foxes. They could be badgers, they could be your neighbour's dogs. There's any animal which is larger than chicken that could potentially come into your garden could be seen as a predator who could damage your flock. So what we have is electric fencing, and I think you can just see it behind me within our garden area. And that actually prevents any foxes or dogs, or even there is a badger that roams through the field at night, and they are put off actually coming into the chicken area. Housing your chickens takes some thinking about as well. We have a number of coops in the chicken enclosure. They have very different designs. In the main though, they're similar to this one behind me, and one advantage of this design is that I think if you can see there's a grey box above the door, that's actually an auto opener and closer. When it detects enough sunlight, it opens the door. When the sunlight fades at dusk, it closes the door. That protects your chickens even more from any attacks from foxes or badgers during the night. Within the coop, you need to provide some bedding for your chickens. There's lots of options out there. You can provide hay, you can provide straw, or you can provide wood shavings, as we do. We actually use dust extracted shavings, which are designed for horses, and we buy them in very large bales from the local equine merchant. The advantage of shavings is that you can clean them out as you would muck out a horse. So actually once a day I do what I call a poo pick, and pick out any obvious wet patches or any obvious pieces of poop and dispose of those. Now it actually means economically I'm using far less wood shavings than if I cleaned out once a week or on a more irregular basis. Access to water is an absolute must for your chickens. This design here is a galvanised waterer, and it's a very common design. It's slightly more expensive than a basic plastic waterer. The only issue with plastic waterers is they don't last anywhere near as long as the galvanised versions. They tend to go brittle in sunlight. Having said that, it takes quite a while for them to go brittle, so much of this depends on how long you intend to keep your chickens for. Feeding your chickens takes actually quite a bit of thinking about. Now, you can just throw some grain into the enclosure in the morning and the evening, and the chickens will peck it up. Alternatively, you can provide an on-demand feeder, and those come in all sorts of formats. So you can have a basic plastic open feeder that the chickens will access. Alternatively, you can look at a higher end version like this that we have, which is a grandpa's feeder. The chickens step on this treadle, the lid opens, and then they have access to their pellets inside. The advantage with this type of feeder is that wild birds can't steal the food and vermin can't get into it, so you're less likely to have any issues with rats or mice. Now, I've mentioned one or two times about the issues with rodents and vermin around people's chickens, and it is something which needs some consideration and thinking about. Now, I've already talked about the different feeders and the ways potentially you can keep chicken food away from vermin, but you also need to consider how you're going to store the food before it goes into the chicken feeders. What we have is a very simple solution. So here you'll see we have just some black bins with bricks on the lid, and inside those bins we keep the chicken food. Very simple, doesn't need to be complicated. Chickens like to keep themselves clean, and they do that actually by bathing in either dirt or, in this case, in sand. The idea is that if they've got any mites or any crawlies or nasties in their feathers, that the fine soil or fine sand will actually stick to those little mites and they will drop off their skin. As you can see, it's one of their favourite little hangouts during the day, and they spend an awful lot of time in this. It's actually a tractor tyre filled with red builder sand. Doesn't need to be complicated, can actually be very simple. One of the things that any new chicken keeper must consider is the health of your chickens. Now, we keep a small first aid kit for the chickens to one side. One thing I would say that any chicken keeper must have is some kind of wound spray or some iodine or gentian violet, which will disinfect any wounds. Usually they come in a purple colour, and the reason for that is that chickens, when they see red, will see it as a sign of weakness within the flock, and they will actually potentially attack each other. They see weakness in the flock and they want to root it out. It's also a good idea to have some kind of housing disinfectant. Now this one, which is a powder that you then make into a liquid that you spray within the houses. It kills any type of red spider mite, or it's also a fungicide, so we use it for major scrub downs of the coops when we strip them down and take all the bedding out. It's something which everyone should have. I've also got just this little bucket. It's actually an old 1 kilo yogurt pot, and it's useful for all sorts of things. It's useful for young chicks if they need washing or looking after. They can just be popped inside there. They're perfectly safe. They don't jump out, it's slightly too high, and you can treat any little wounds that they may have, which there's all sorts of accidents that can happen. Mum can step on them, their siblings can accidentally tear feathers. It doesn't happen very often, but it's best to be prepared. And the last one is this, and if you do have a cockerel, I would recommend that you get one of these. Now, cockerels can be very enthusiastic with hens, and if they've only got access to a small number of hens, they can actually wear the feathers away on the hens' backs when they mount to do the bow chicka wow wow. Now, you put the strings here over their wings, and it sits like a little saddle, a little apron on the back, and they are actually called chicken saddles. But if you don't have these, what you can find is great big bald patches on the back of some of your hens, and then you've got to start worrying in summer about them actually getting sunburn, and that's really not something you want to be thinking about with your chickens. So if you do have cockerels and a small number of hens, I would recommend having some of these, so at the first sign of feather wear you can pop these on and actually stop your hens being damaged. Now hopefully this information has given you something to think about, and hopefully more of you will actually start keeping chickens in your backyard. They are very rewarding. They are beautiful little creatures. They keep me happy the whole time. They're just so friendly, inquisitive, fantastic eggs. You'll never taste better than eggs that have been laid by your own chickens in your own backyard. So good luck, and if you have any questions, please do just drop us a line either through this subscriber channel, or you can send me queries through Twitter. I am at the Floof Lady. Floof is FLOOF. Hope to see you soon.